Thank you, Neil. See you. So,
I guess here, let's wait for Wade to make sure.
is you ready? Okay. All right. Thank you. I should have asked you first because I know you have to switch some things around. So very good. All right. So we'll go to the event naming conventions. And so the issue there is, should we continue with this holiday celebrations, or should we just try to admit that these are Christmas celebrations and call them such? So, and just really need to know a consensus about this. So if we need to take formal action, we can do that next week when we have a formal meeting.
Yeah, I typed up just from 2017 on what all the names were, just a little history. Really, I leave it up to the will of the council for their decision.
I'll pipe up again. I'm talkative tonight. I don't mind if we call it a holiday celebration, if we're including events for all different groups of people. If we're just doing Santa Claus and a Christmas tree, then I think it's a Christmas celebration. Is that clear? Let's start things off.
I'll jump in. I'm not sure why it was ever changed, but Christmas is December 25th, and I think the majority of our citizens knew that at least this council member was elected as a Christian conservative, and so I certainly would support going back to that historical basis of what the real holiday is, and not beat around the bush with it.
I don't have any strong feelings on this. I think calling it the holiday celebration or Christmas is fine. I'm not offended by it either way. So, thank you.
I would prefer Christmas for myself, but I can understand other positions. But if I would definitely lean toward Christmas if I had a choice.
Okay. Well, that's certainly my feeling as well. I don't know if the two of you have something to say about it. You're the only ones that haven't spoke up. So,
Well, 2 years ago, I brought up the issues with proclamations, and we're always dancing, on offending somebody. I appreciate staff giving us kind of this history. It looks like it was just sort of unilaterally changed by when the chamber got involved with it. And I appreciate all their work on it, but it's up to this governing body. Historically, it's been called Christmas. I can see where Councilmember Welch is coming from. It almost seems like you're just sort of pandering in a weird way if it's all Christmas. I don't look to government to define my religion anyway, but it's historically been called Christmas. I'm okay with that. I wouldn't have died if we left it a holiday, but it was historically Christmas, and I'm okay going back with that, since that seems to be the theme when I've been at these events. It is a Christmas event. So
I agree with that. I think it is predominantly a Christian celebration that we're doing. And I kind of like the idea of a holiday celebration, but if we do that, we have to find ways for other groups. There are other groups that celebrate events at the end of the year, and I have not seen any of that mentioned. And I don't know if there's people that would like to come forward and propose something and add those things, then I would be perfectly fine with going to holiday celebration.
okay. I think you got the consensus. So, anyway, okay. Well, thank you for their input. I think we have the consensus, so I think we could probably move on to.
It leans pretty far, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So change the start time city council workshop. So we'll talk about that. Item 5. And this was at Councilmember Welch's suggestion, but I actually had a broader idea in mind than just to 7 p.m. But that got put in the agenda. So because another thing that comes up, and this isn't a big deal, but we have our meetings on Tuesday nights, and all elections are on Tuesdays, all of them. And I'm not saying it should change it, but maybe we change it just for the election nights, because all of us here at this bench are elected officials, and we will have that election next year. For some of us, not myself, but some council members have to stand for election. So anyway, I just wondered if we would be wise to maybe on those nights that fall on election, we move it, shift it to the following Wednesday for that week. Just as a standing policy.
I think all of our elections are on the first Tuesday of the month, are they not? Which would be the council meeting,
Right.
not the workshop.
That's right. It is council meeting.
I just thought we should be consistent that all our meetings start at the same time. People would know when it is. I have to think every time my wife questions me every week. She says, "What time does your meeting start this week?" And sometimes I say, "Where there isn't one," and sometimes it's 6:30, and sometimes it's 7. And I have to consult my calendar because I don't remember that well either.
Yeah. So if we can get a consensus on workshops starting at 7, is that okay? Just to keep it consistent, then we can move on to maybe Jim's concern.
I had a question on this from staff's perspective. I think when we're taking binding action, 7 o'clock is great because it gives people more time to get here and comment. From staff's perspective, would it be helpful? Like, what are they doing in the in-between time, like on workshop night? If we moved it to 6 p.m., I know that's the opposite of where our discussion has been. Would that be helpful to staff to move it up so they're not hanging around?
And usually you're just talking to City Attorney Maria Schrock and I, because we're probably the most consistent ones, and maybe Ann. From my perspective, my perspective, sometimes it's nice to go home and have dinner with your family and then come. That it kind of runs tight on 6:30, but that's just, I got small kids, and that's why. Maria might, I think she usually stays after, and so 6 might be better for Maria. So I would say whatever you guys choose, we'll follow. So
if it's split in that way, I think I just support 7 p.m. just for consistency. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no strong feelings on it one way or the other, so I just whatever others want to do.
I would support 7 just because of consistency.
Okay. All right. So I think we have a consensus there. That 7
Okay.
p.m. is a good time to.
And as
do
far
that.
as I think in the past we've shifted, with ample notice, we've done a council meeting on my Wednesday, or kind of sideswiped a holiday, a national holiday of some sort, or election. The only issue this election is I think we have a bond sale scheduled for election day. So before we do any drastic changings on that day, let me confirm with
I
that.
don't think we can make that decision tonight anyway.
No,
We
you
can only do it
wouldn't.
we can only talk about consensus here. We have to make
Yeah.
a formal motion
Correct,
to change
correct,
that one.
correct.
Isn't that correct?
Correct. That
Yeah.
one would be a formal
Because
motion. The workshop
because
would.
The workshop doesn't require that,
No.
but the city council meeting requires a formal notice.
Correct.
So yeah, we'd have to.
Ample notice. Yeah.
So, okay.
I was just going to pop in on this one. Also, in the interest of consistency, I mean, last year on November 7th, I mean, I'm sure Tyler and I were tempted to keep checking the election website, but other than that, it didn't affect me coming here on election day,
Mhm.
November 5th this year. I don't have any reason why we can't just have our meeting. Other than, are you thinking of like people might be at their election parties or things like that?
Well,
or-
people do have those.
Well,
yes.
yeah, no, I know, but I to me, it doesn't feel like. I mean, because I have a standing Wednesday obligation, so if we
Oh, I
shift
see.
that, I mean,
Okay, see,
Tuesday is kind of the date.
That
So,
makes sense.
but
Yeah.
but that's
Okay.
just my opinion.
I don't.
I would stick to Tuesday, and if we have to, we could maybe limit the agenda, because if you're talking about election parties, they don't really get swinging until 8 or 9 after some of the results start coming in. So we could
That's
get
true.
something done.
You can always look at the 4th Tuesday that month too. I mean, that's probably a case by case basis is my,
Right.
whether it's for election night or some other thing, just shift it to the 4th
Yeah, do it
Tuesday.
as needed.
as needed.
Yeah.
That would be my input on it.
That's what I agree.
So, all right. Well, that's the reason for the discussion, just see what people thought. So it doesn't sound like we want to change it, but maybe always try to look at a shorter agenda for those nights if that's possible. Sound like you already loaded it though. It's actually
A lot going on.
actually that probably isn't that long of a deal. It's
Yeah.
just that you have to schedule those bond sales, and that has to be done on a certain date.
It has to be approved on the same day. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I get that. So, okay. All right, very good. All right, do we have our other folks here to talk about these other items? Well, tell them come in. Well, he's going to read about pipelines. How you doing?
Ready for me now?
Yeah, we are. Come on up and introduce
Wasn't
yourself.
quite
and
sure.
Tell us tell us all about Purple Heart City's presentation. So,
Well, I
thank
appreciate you having me, Mr. Mayor. My name is Zach Schuman. I'm the adjutant for the Military Order of the Purple Heart, both locale 558, which is here in Wichita, and as well as the state of Kansas too. Had the pleasure of being able to kind of go up and through the ranks and try to get a little bit more familiar with the organization and what all it's about, and sharing some of the passions that I have as well. So I'll give you just a brief history of what the Purple Heart Trail is. It was established in 1992, and the purpose of the Purple Heart Trail is to create a symbolic and honorary system of roads, highways, bridges, and other monuments that give tribute to the men and women who have been awarded the Purple Heart Medal. The Purple Heart Trail accomplishes this honorary goal by creating a visual reminder for those who use those road systems that others have paid the high price for their freedom to travel and live in a free society. So the signs that are placed around the various locations annotate those roads and highways where legislation has been passed to designate parts of the national road system as the Purple Heart Trail. The actual format and the design of the signs vary from state to state, but they're currently designated sections in 45 states as well as Guam, all across the U.S. and of course Guam as well. So, this is a very passionate piece of my heart, obviously, being a Purple Heart recipient. One of the organizations that we work with very closely is also the Gold Star families, which, obviously, they are already awarded the Purple Heart as well, but sometimes they're more on the Gold Star family side versus the military of the Purple Heart. So we try to kind of augment that as much as we can in getting and gaining some of that recognition for those that are local. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that anybody may have as far as what that process looks like or anything for that nature.
So I met Zach at the last Sedgwick County Association of Cities meeting, and he gave a presentation there about Gold Star or Purple Heart cities and communities. So I do know the city of Hayesville is a Purple Heart city. The Sedgwick County has adopted the Purple Heart designation as a county. I believe there are other communities in the area too. I just don't know the names of them. Maybe you know them, Zach.
There are. In fact, as far as the cities are concerned, Arc City, Russell, Derby, Hayesville, Holton, Leavenworth, McPherson, Seneca, Topeka, and Valley Center, along with Wichita. The universities are Grantham University. Beyond that, the counties, there's only 3 counties so far, which is Jackson County, Leavenworth, and Sedgwick County. I know that Cali County is up and coming as well. The commander of the VFW, he's actually a Gold Star father as well, so he's pretty passionate about that. We've been working with him and guiding as far as that. Beyond just the trail itself, there's many different entities that could also become. We also have a couple of up toward the Kansas City area. There's also businesses that have bought into trying to become a Purple Heart business and get that recognition as well by putting up those, along with the handicap signs. There's also veterans and Purple Heart placards. You've probably seen them around Home Depot or Lowe's. Some of those will individually do theirs as well. So there's many different entities that are out there, not just the trail itself.
So tell us, what does it entail to become a Purple Heart city? What do we do?
So it's basically a proclamation, which is a pretty simple and easy process. What the commander and I have been trying to accomplish right now is that back in 2003, when Kathleen Sebelius made all the Kansas highways Purple Heart highways, there's a lot of old signage and stuff like that it's it's definitely in disarray and needing of repair. So we've kind of come up with a plan to allow cities to come on board to get that recognition, as well as help to contribute back and try to help to repair some of those signs that are in disarray. So ultimately, it is a proclamation, and that is it. It's a pretty simple process. So beyond that, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of how to become a Purple Heart City.
Do we post signs to that effect as well, or?
That's
or-
what they have done. Whether that means it's the main entrances of the city. I think the city of Wichita actually has 12 different signs that they have up. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell where the county signs are and where the city signs are, because there's not much of a differentiation there. It doesn't necessarily say, Purple Heart County. It'll just say the Purple Heart Cities or Purple Heart Trail that goes along with it. So sometimes it's a little gray area of where is where.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I knew there was something to that effect, but I didn't know exactly to what extent it is. So.
So would you suggest we designate one roadway through town as the Purple Heart Trail, or?
Without looking at it, typically the city manager would kind of come up with that plan as far as where that looks like that would get the most traffic to come through. But I would definitely say that if if it's just, say, 2 signs, then the most well-traveled road that you have going through Bel Aire.
So for a Purple Heart City, not a road, then would we associate the signs with the city of Bel Aire signage for the city? So if there's a Bel Aire sign, which I think we have 6 maybe of those, would we have a Purple Heart near that sign? Would that be one way to do it?
Absolutely.
Is there guidance on, how to best do this?
So I know for a fact that there's at least one of the signs that's coming in. I'd have to go back and see which road it's actually on, but where it talks about Sedgwick County and has a Sedgwick County sign,
Sure.
and then the Purple Heart sign is simply just tagged to the same pole below
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I think you see that on K254 as you come from Butler County into Sedgwick County.
Right.
Okay.
I've seen that one. I haven't seen a lot of the others, but I've
Because
seen that
that way it kind of associates the Purple Heart with the city
Yes.
instead of with the road.
And
It
I've
sounds
seen
like
it
there's
as
roads
elaborate.
in cities and whatever else. you guys-
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've seen it as elaborate as them making up a whole brand new sign that
Okay.
incorporates all of it all together as well. So there's definitely different variants there. It also depends on the resources that you have as far as, I know that Sedgwick County, they purchased a few signs from the company that does it pro bono down in Texas.
Okay.
But then they also made the rest of their signs in-house. So I've seen it both ways.
Is there an approval process to say this is legit for Purple Heart? If somebody makes their own, do you guys have some guideline or something that says somebody has to approve that variant? Or
There is, and it's just on the different images that is being used.
Okay.
As long as it's just the metal or the image of the metal, that's copacetic, but not the crest that they have that has the entire military order of the Purple Heart. It's a circular type crest.
So in our
So-
case, we'd probably buy the signs because we don't have a sign shop. Okay. So-
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of see what the guidelines were
Right.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have those sign shops as well. And that's what the majority of the ones that we've engaged with, they've ended up using those, that company as well.
Okay.
So-
Thanks.
Most of our city limit signs are those monuments. Is there room on there to etch something,
Or
or?
we could do next to it or something. I don't know.
Well, I think it'd look kind of cheesy to have a little metal sign right beside that big.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A lot of them are monuments, but we do have some City of Bel Air limit signs. I know there's one on Rock in 45th, I believe, because there's a Lions Club.
I think
thing
maybe
underneath.
if we're interested in pursuing this, maybe we ask our city manager to bring his staff together, make recommendations, and come back to us with those recommendations. And I mean, if you want to do 4 signs or 12 signs or whatever you guys think is the right, I'm not going to sit here and try to figure that out. It's just. Yeah.
I did
If you
have
wanna do that.
a quick question. So are you from here locally? Sorry if you said that
I
earlier.
actually am from Wichita.
From Wichita.
Yes.
So, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, when my grandpa was had a Purple Heart from an injury in 1944 in Italy, and it affected him for the next 60 years of his life. So any question I ask is not meant to be disrespectful. But what is like the benefit to the city? Are there grants that can open you up for declaring a Purple Heart city, or it's purely just to kind of identify some of your roads and kind of add to the trail system in Kansas? And then from our perspective, just maintain those signs going forward?
Yes, so it's pretty much just a outward expression of an internal need or want to support the Military Order of the Purple Heart.
It just my own self personally, I don't have any family members that are Purple Hearts, but I have 3 brothers that served during the Vietnam War era. I have a son who served in the Bosnia crisis back during the Clinton administration. So, I mean, none of them received Purple Hearts, none of them received injuries, but they still served. And I think that honoring those who serve our country is important.
Well, that was kind of my next question. I support all the guys that got the Purple Heart, but shouldn't we, is there a way to support everybody?
Well,
Where do we
It's a
draw the
veterans,
line on?
it's a veterans, you
Yeah,
can do that, but I don't know that there's this type of designation for veterans, but maybe there is. I'm just not smart enough to know about it.
I'm not sure, but one of our biggest advocates that help us out is the VFW. So they help us out quite a bit. So I would assume that if they had their own designation or way of recognizing veterans, that they would be pushing that as well.
So we think they're good with that. I just didn't want to leave them out. I mean, they do a great service. So
Oh, no, they help us out quite a bit. There's only 4 of us that are active in the state of Kansas for Military Order of the Purple Heart. That's the entire state. So we definitely lean on the VFW quite a bit for a lot of that support to help us out. So, and they're very involved in the Gold Star families as well. So,
Well, thank you for coming and sharing, and thank you for your service.
thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your taking the time, Jack. And I think we probably have a consensus here. We won't let the staff to come up with a recommendation. But I'm sorry, go on. Did you have something?
I was just going to jump in. I'm a little torn. I actually think that sign on 254 almost covers Bel Aire as you come into town. I'm not deeply opposed to it. I just, on principle, I kind of worry with proclamations and honoring people. I know that we had this discussion 2 years ago, and I didn't convince council then. I just get a little worried when we start doing this, and then we start denying other people. So I'm a little torn, but I'm open to hearing more from staff. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All right. Well, thank you very much, Zach. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So commercial building inspections, is that the next item?
That's the next
Okay.
item.
We have everybody we need for this, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you know, Keith Price is going to retire here really soon. Losing, him, not only losing a department head, but a master planning and zoning administrator, a master building inspector for residential and commercial, and 22 years of Bel Aire experience. So I kind of wanted to go through the history of when I heard of the retirement and what we're doing to make sure we not only cover him, but improve services in Bel Aire. As you know, we've experienced a tremendous amount of growth since 2020. There's been so much building going on. I'm at 134 residential permits year after year, as well as some commercial just now starting in Bel Aire. In 2022, this council identified all the growth, and we kind of tried to hire someone to help out. And we had some issues, and we ended up hiring more or less a residential building inspector to help Keith out. When Keith announced his retirement, I immediately went through a lot of interviews with a lot of different candidates and saw some qualities that might work and might not work. And really, when something like this happens, we want to improve our process in Bel Aire. And that's when Paula Downs entered the interview stage. And she is really, she has about 10 years experience in building buildings. She understands blueprints for the county. She worked at WSU for the last 10 years, building up these processes and training planning commissions. And so I'm really proud of the hire we had with Paula. And when we were, covering all the different areas, and I'll get Paul up here to go through the process with you, but commercial building inspections is one thing that is really difficult to find and to cover without the master certification. So that's why we're here tonight. I just wanted to tee it up, kind of what we're doing with that department. And Paul is going to take us through the process, and I'll jump in here and there throughout the presentation.
Good evening. So from a vision perspective, as I came on board, some of the conversation was Keith knows a lot. He's been here 22 years, has had a lot of responsibility. So we have great staff, and I'm coming on board bringing different skills. So what do we do? And so part of the vision for the department has been laid out basically from previous decisions that the council has made related to all the things you have on there. But most of what we have is we have a great professional residential building inspector who is really growing up in the system, has gotten a lot of information and has been training. And I think that we're pretty solid. And when Ted says, well, what should we do with building inspections related to residential? And I said, this is a really important factor for Bel Aire. I think we should keep it in-house. I think it's important to continue to have care and control over residential, but commercial is a little bit farther and fewer between, and that maybe we can bridge that gap with another solution. So the idea is to move forward, keeping all of the residential building inspection as we know it right now in the city, and then turning over or letting MABCD take over the commercial. Right now we have 5 commercial properties in various stages of construction. I don't know what that number will be next year or the year after. And there's a possibility that moving forward, we could make some different decisions. But right now we are in the middle of 5, and Keith's leaving November 1, and we need people to inspect it.
So Paul, you use a bunch of initials there. I don't have any idea what those stand for.
Thank you, sir, for reminding me of not using Metropolitan Area Building and construction department, which is a joint effort between Sedgwick County and the city of Wichita.
Okay, so joint.
And they do
department.
all of those inspections related to the city of Wichita, Sedgwick County. They have all kinds of, and Chris is going to talk a little bit more about it, but they also help many of the cities within Sedgwick County.
Okay,
On all different levels. Some of them they're completely doing all the inspections for, both residential and commercial. Some of it's just commercial. Sometimes they're just backup inspectors. However that works differently in each city. And now they have just incorporated the city of Andover, who's in Butler County.
Yeah.
They're having the same issue with building inspectors and trying to find professional staff. So they were the known quantity in the room related to who in the world's going to do commercial inspections starting November 1. So we have a great relationship. We've been talking to them about that because the community development department, as we are going to be learning more about how I come into this, there's a lot going on. We have a long-term employee retiring. We are bringing in all kinds of new processes and procedures. You all approved Tyler Technology ERP system, which is a whole shift in the way in which we process everything in this department. So we need to spend time shoring up the processes, procedures related to zoning administration, zoning codes. We are scanning and organizing documents to make it easier for staff to have access to everything in a very easy way. We're updating forms, documents, policies, website information. We have this little comprehensive plan coming on board soon, which will have us making a lot of adjustments, right? We're going to have to update codes. We're going to have to think about processes differently based on how we decide the city needs to move forward. And so in addition to all that, a lot of the staff in this department is new. So continued training for all the staff, including me, is going to take a lot of effort. And so from a commercial inspection process, it seemed logical to move it there as we move forward with all of these visions for the department as we move forward. I think you're up, sir.
Some cost considerations to think about, and Paula mentioned it. Yeah, we have probably 4 to 5 commercial properties being built right now, but I've been here 8 years, and I can count maybe 4 in the first 7 years I've been here. Not to say we're not going to continue this trend, but this is not exactly a large portion of our revenue base year in, year out. However, with, you know, if we wanted to retain in-house, $70,000 salary with equipment, space, office. I mean, we're looking at $100,000 a year just to keep a commercial building inspector. I have been in conversations with Andover to see if we can't find a joint inspector and share trade. We have both had job postings for several months, and really nothing on both sides materialized, and hence Andover's gone to MABCD as well. And really it's a much smoother process for these builders and these construction companies, and we'll talk about that coming up. But I had a big spreadsheet on comparing fees and our fees and their fees, and what it's going to do to the revenues. But really a lot of the buildings we're building right now are in the $7 million range. So I took that. So the way we're doing it now, if a businesses wanted to come in and build a $7 million building, $31,000 we would collect in a permit fee. If we go to MABCD, it's a 75-25 split, so that we would only collect about $11,000. So that's $20,000 for one building, which sounds like a lot, but when you're only doing 8 for 8 years, it's really that's kind of the trend we've been at. And like Paula said, many cities are doing the same. So it's pretty seamless in that regards. But that's kind of the cost considerations. Again, we go over individual amounts, but that's kind of the gist of it. We're going to take a little bit in the revenue side, but that's mainly a cost share with MABCD. So we're not going to increase expense. It's just more going to be a less revenue than we're used to.
So I surmise that the building code that MABCD will follow is a building code adopted by the Wichita and Sedgwick County.
Correct. That's our next
Metropolitan
presentation point. So you're right
Oh,
on.
okay.
You're right on target.
Thank you for using
There's a
MABCD.
question here.
One more
Go ahead,
question
one
on
more
the
question.
Greg?
Okay. No, it'd be so
That's 15. No,
our fees are
7.5.
currently lower. Our fees are currently lower than MABCD's. So with going with them, we'd have to adopt their code. So it's less of a 75-25. It's more like to us in our revenues, it's what 8% difference. So it's not quite 25. It's 18 or whatever. Yeah, 17. So we would charge MABCD rates to our businesses coming in, which are a little higher than our current rates. So,
Does that mean we need to adjust a fee schedule
correct.
someplace?
We did it with residential rates 2 years ago. We just didn't follow suit with commercial side. So
we would
the
be
residential
adjusting
rate's been
our
vetted.
commercial rates.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Correct.
I'm going to push a button. I'm going to hope it's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So what we're looking at related to the agreement with Metropolitan Area Building is they would do the plan review. They would do the inspection, any enforcement of whatever that inspection resulted in. They would be doing the permitting directly. Most developers, we require right now in the city of Bel Aire that whoever works in Bel Aire also has to be licensed with MABCD. So they're already used to the process related to permitting, getting into the system, entering their information, filling out their applications, working with this department. So it's not going to shift anything related to the developers. It will automatically be sent to the Sedgwick County Fire Department, just like we would do for them to review those plans from their process. We would then in turn receive monthly activity statements listing how many people filed the applications for permit, how many inspections were done, and receive our portion, the 25% portion for that activity. Annually, we would get a written report, and then we did build into the contract, or would like to build into the contract, this opportunity for them to act as backup if we needed assistance in residential. I have to grant staff vacation time. I know it's a real bummer, right? But we don't want business to be shut down because we don't have a building inspector. So they would be available on a already established fee for them to come and do inspections if we needed to with 24-hour notice, so the business wouldn't shut down.
So questions with regard to that, and I don't know how our building codes vary from Wichita or Sedgwick County, but my guess tells me that MABCD wants to use the codes they're already using and not,
Correct. And
a
I will
change.
show you where we are compared to where they are. Give
okay.
me one more slide and I
Yep,
promise I will answer that.
All right.
Our responsibilities in this whole process, of course, would not change in the fact that we would still be doing the zoning code review and submitting our comments into the system so that the inspectors are aware of our particular needs in our community. We would retain any prosecutorial decisions if anything had to be, right, we can make all the decisions related to that. We would retain all authority over variances or anything that came before us. And we are going to issue the final occupancy certificate. It gives us an opportunity to put eyes on what's been inspected and that it meets everything that we need it to meet so that we don't issue an occupancy and then realize something happened. So we will maintain that opportunity. They will submit or complete a final inspection report, which we will be able to view and then issue the occupancy from Bel Aire. So that won't change. And then we will be able then to also confirm and provide information to MABCD that in fact the builder or the trade has a license in the city of Bel Aire. They might have one in Wichita, but we're going to have the opportunity to click the box that says, yes, they've paid their licensing fee in Bel Aire. So we maintain a lot of control except for the on-site permitting, and the permit process and the on-site inspections, which can help us quite a bit.
So Bel Aire would go into the system and start a process that we enter all the data, and until we get to a certain point, they can't issue a permit or do anything else.
So they're going to do the plan review. We're going to do the zoning code review. Sedgwick County is going to do the fire code reviews, and that information will be put into the system. Then that approval, all those boxes checked and everything looks good, then they know to issue the permit to start building and inspecting.
Okay, you refer to the system. What is the system?
There's the actual process in which a builder goes in and requests
Where
inspections.
does this system reside?
MABCD's system.
Okay, so we don't have control of the system.
Not the permitting piece or setting the schedule for the inspections. We
Okay.
have the review. We have the review ability to review the plan, whatever we need to review to
I think what
approve.
Okay,
It's
so
not
follow
our
my
software.
audit trail.
It's not our software.
All right. So
permit's
following
for
my,
commercial.
my auditor audit trail here, you get a inspection report. Where does that record reside?
The final I'm sorry, I'm not
Well,
sure I know.
we're issuing the occupancy certificate, right?
Final occupancy
Final,
certificate,
but
correct.
where does the inspection report that triggers that occupancy certificate? Who owns that? Where does it reside?
It resides in their system,
It resides in
MABCD's.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
But we have access. Is that what
Okay.
you're asking? Yeah, I can get into that system. Yes.
plus what is the record retention requirement for MACD for Bel Aire's records? Because now you're saying they're going to hold those records.
We will receive the final inspection report. So we will hold it in our
So that's
system.
our record.
That will be our record.
Okay.
Yes.
That-
Along with the final occupancy and any documents that are required from a records retention perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to make sure we weren't missing that because that's kind of
So glad we went
important
around
maybe.
that block and I understood it very clearly from the beginning. So I apologize. Yes, we will have access to the records. They're still doing work in Bel Aire. We will have the final inspection report or any other concerns that come up along the way. And we will keep those records as part of our retention requirements.
So that last line, we're talking about commercial, and then you talked about residential, and that last line implies everybody, whether it's residential or commercial, has to be in their system. Is that true? Or is that just commercial?
No, everybody that does business in Bel Aire, we require them to also have a license through MACD.
You're talking
MABCD.
contractors.
Yes,
Yes.
and trades,
So,
builders and
but
trades,
what-
commercial and residential.
I don't know if you're asking this question, but it triggers a question in my mind.
Go
Is that if a building inspector wants to come or a builder wants to come and build this house and he says, I want to build this house, does he need to go into MABCD to put that in, or does he start the process with Bel Aire? I mean, I don't know if you're going there, but kind of what I think.
Why I'm trying to sort it out.
That's okay.
No, for residential, they'll come straight to Bel Aire. The builder will for a residential permit and go through our system. We're just talking about the certification it's been like that for probably 20 years, that we require the tradesmen to have the carry
license.
MABCD license, just so we know they're certified.
But that's
It's
a
in our-
licensing issue.
That's a licensing
licensing.
issue. That's
Oh,
completely
okay,
separate.
all
I'm sorry.
right.
Yeah,
I mean, it does say
licensing.
licensing, but I didn't
Yes.
want, I wanted to make sure I understood what that meant.
Yes,
But they
licensing.
still have to be
Business
registered and pay their whatever fee it is to Bel Air to be able to work in Bel Air.
Correct. They will always have to do that.
Okay.
It's one of our requirements. Absolutely.
How many
I-
people do we have doing inspections for residential today? 2?
1.5.
1.25, 1.5,
About
half a
one.
person, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
and then commercial, they have, I assume, more than one that does it?
Oh, you mean
MABCD.
they have what? You have 30? 32.
Okay, so you have plenty on the commercial side. All right, I just didn't
Good
want to
hope.
somehow create
Yeah.
a delay. I mean, I just had a discussion with someone not from Bel Air, but in other places where their issue was dealing with getting permits was a long process and all that. And I just want to make sure we're not creating any bottlenecks. Assume not.
I don't think that that's going to happen.
Okay,
It's a very, I mean, they're used to entering in. Most of the people who build in Bel Air are building in Wichita and have to go through the process pretty frequently. I don't know
Okay.
that we have anybody unique that's just in Bel Air and not building in Wichita and some of the surrounding areas. So they know they have to be licensed and they're familiar with the system and how to get into it and what they need to do.
okay.
But the one thing you can say is with 32 inspectors, they're probably going to have at least one that can come out sometime to inspect. Whereas with Bel Air next month, we're going to have 0.
That's correct.
I had,
a lot of the positives too, and Chris Labram from MABCD director is here tonight, and he's itching to talk because I'm sure we're fumbling a few of his processes. So I'll probably bring him up and let him answer a lot of these questions and go through the zoning codes. That helps. So Chris.
And I don't know if this will be helpful to you, Chris, but this is the information that staff did.
And
so you
whatever
know.
we've got. So, you know it's a good day when you're trying to hustle to get out of your office to not be late for a 7 p.m. meeting, right, Mayor? But so, yeah, Mayor, City Council members, it's an honor to be here tonight. I thank you for that. Chris Labram, as Mr. Henry said, I am the director of MABCD, Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department. It is a little redundant. There is a Metropolitan Area Planning Department. And when MABCD was formed, the lawyers were looking for a catchy acronym that was very similar to MAPD. They came up with MABCD, and then kind of backed into that. So it's a little frustrating for us because construction in that regard kind of implies public works. So I do get a lot of questions about bridges and roads and sidewalks and have to send those on over to Public Works because people assume they're in the right spot. But a couple things to start off with, and I'll try to kind of keep up with what has been discussed. So my department has 85 total employees. 32 of those are qualified inspectors between commercial, residential, and trades. We run the combination inspector concept. So our positions are inspectors 1 through 4. By the time someone gets to an inspector 4, they're a fully qualified combination inspector in their field. So if they're an electrician, they would be able to inspect all things electrical. If they're a building inspector, they would be able to inspect all residential to include the trades, as well as all commercial building inspections. So we schedule across them. We have obviously a fairly robust system that allows for online scheduling, for call-in scheduling, and a few different options there with the inspections. We do require, for example, we require that you schedule by 6 a.m. the morning of your inspection in order to ensure an inspection. Generally, if we're in a backup scenario, like we might be in for residential, we're going to request that we get those at close of business the day before so that we have a chance to get them into our system. But it still happens. We get some the next morning. We usually don't have a problem figuring that out. So one thing I wanted to mention is my folks have known Keith Price a lot of years. I've worked with him quite a bit. We've worked with him on code reviews and different things we've done. So his processes and ours for plan review, et cetera, are fairly similar. So I do not think you would see a big shift in timelines and submission and types of review, et cetera. And we obviously would want to do right and take care of you there. I see why you said the button. Okay. A few things with that. We do, when you talk code, we do follow or have created a unified building and trades code. So this is just to help us kind of consolidate the numerous codes that we manage into a document, especially where, as Mr. Henry said, we oversee the inspections, the work for a lot of different jurisdictions. So within Sedgwick County, and we actually have currently a contract with you all to provide backup inspections if and when required. We don't do a lot. I think we did 50 some odd last year for Bel Aire. But if needed, we get a call from Keith. We schedule it, get folks out here, and then we invoice you for the cost of those. Within Sedgwick County, of the 20 cities, we have some form of agreement with 18. So Derby and Hayesville right now are the only two that completely handle their own, or at least in the case with Hayesville, if they need help, it's an individual agreement each time. Then we also do support Sumner County and we support Butler County, but mainly with Andover. And we are, as also was mentioned, we're robusting that to where we will provide the bulk of support to Andover. So a very similar situation as far as the plan review and the permitting and the licensing and that's being discussed here, but we're going to take their residential and commercial, their commercial inspections. So one thing when we talk about our general provisions, since we do this across several cities, we are sensitive to the fact that you all need to retain authority for your jurisdiction. Records retention, a lot of those questions that you ask are very good questions, exactly the ones you should be looking at. And we will too, as we go forward with any of this, because we have to ensure that you retain that authority, that you retain that final say, and that you that you're able to stand up to audits with your records and anything along those lines. So before I get too far ahead, I will jump a little. If you all are ready for that, I'll go kind of through our codes, and then we can still, as we hit this, we can talk a little bit of the methodology with the actual processes too. And I'll try to be quick with this. So as stated, the structure there is that we try to consolidate that into one reference base. Each of our codes is categorized into a respective article. These are separated out from, say, like the Sedgwick County sanitary codes and some other things that we also do enforce. We generally follow the International Code Council codes. We have one exception to that, and that is our plumbing code. We're still in the Uniform Plumbing Code, and that is a matter of who publishes those. So the International Code Council is a nonprofit. They still cost a lot of money, like everybody else, but they are technically a nonprofit organization. The uniform codes are published by IAPMO, which is the International Association of, and I don't know if the rest is important, but IAPMO, those are the union-based organizations. So they do come from construction union workers organizations. So they are not nonprofit. The nation in general tends to be a little more trusting of the nonprofit codes. We do not see great differences there. There's still a fairly large plumbing lobby across the nation. That is the one area where the IAPMO codes still have the majority of codes is in the plumbing area. What we have worked out with the local plumbing industry is the tenets of the International Plumbing Code that we like, the things that we think give you options, especially in residential houses, that we want to be able to provide builders. They have accepted those as local amendments. So if you look at our plumbing code, it really is kind of a consolidation of the two codes. So that has worked well for us. It has kept our industry happy, and it has been something we could easily manage. We do include, so for example, the electrical code is a National Fire Protection Agency code, and there are some items like that that are in there. Now, our cycle and a lot of our motivation with this, knowing that we can use local amendments if a new code gets restrictive, knowing that we can come back to the podium if needed mid-cycle to adjust our amendments. We try to avoid that, but we know it's an option. We do look at the codes when they come out every 3 years. We don't try to adopt the building codes, commercial or residential, on that cycle because they're bigger codes. It's a bigger review, and they also don't tend to change as often. we do try to adopt and plan to adopt our trades codes in that cycle. Our main motivator there is because as technology advances, materials are available. We do not want to hold up the industry from being able to take advantage of those. Again, it's fairly easy to go back, and when you're trying to bridge a gap, we have codes and we have processes to be able to look back in a code and authorize things that were once allowed, but now maybe technology's advanced, if that makes sense. But it's hard if I don't adopt that code, it's hard to then go forward and authorize something that is not in any code book that we use. So Article 1 is our general provisions, and that's where the licensing, the fees, and all of that is included. So again, we with that realize that a lot of other jurisdictions use our processes, so we keep that open to such. The discussion of a commercial project, for example, we do require electronic submission of plans, so they can be submitted and they get submitted from all across the country. So in this situation, as we are proposing it, that would come into us. Those plans would be accepted into our system and they would be assigned out. That assignment would include back to Bel Aire. Your staff would have our project docs through Evolve is the software provider that we currently use. And they're web-based, so our licensing includes any of our jurisdiction that needs to utilize those. If there's a cost associated with that, we bear that. It's part of the cost recovery and the fees that we would retain. Those would be assigned out to, just as Mr. Henry described, to fire, to Bel Aire, to all of those that need a piece of that review, and they would approve that along with our plan reviewer, who is specifically looking at the code items and ensuring that fire code and building code are being met. So then again, the fees, et cetera, the licensing, that all is covered in that section, and we can get into more of that as you may have questions. Article 2 is our commercial and residential building codes, and I will actually be at the County Commission in the morning to hold the public hearings for both our commercial building code and our commercial existing building code. As well as for our mechanical code. But so all of the building codes are included in that. Now, we have not yet moved to the newest version of the residential code. Less impact to you all with what we're talking about, but there was a lot of national discussion about the energy code chapter and its relation to the energy code that kind of delayed that for a time. So, we do still amend the energy code out of any codes that we adopt. We certainly encourage folks to use it, allow them to use it if they would like to. We're happy to inspect to that. We're happy to provide the certification for a house or a commercial building that it meets. We can do all the testing, any of that we need, but we do not hold that as a requirement in the code. So obviously we could talk all night long about that, but there's a lot of diminishing returns in the energy codes as they are written. So it will be interesting to see how that goes at a national level. And then we move on. So again, this just lays out which codes are in the different articles. We do have, I don't know if you have elevators and escalators here in buildings. You probably have a few. Okay, the one. So we would need to look at that. The state, and the reason I bring that up is the state fire marshal. There's now a statewide minimum code for elevators. Our code exceeds the requirements of their program, so we do retain the elevator program for Sedgwick County and any who would want to join us. So that's something we would work as we go. We have 1,642 total registered conveyances. So we would easily be able to accommodate the few in Bel Aire. And then I will also be to include in our public hearings tomorrow. We'll include the mechanical code. Now the next little bit, I'll just go through these really quickly because I wanted to show you an example of what we do to adopt. This is one of our shorter public hearing slides, but this is when we recently did the National Electrical Code. Most recent version of that is 2023. That's what we adopted. And a lot of the point of this is that would be, of course, completely up to you all. Most of the jurisdictions outside of Wichita, actually right now, everyone outside of Wichita adopts our code by reference I assume an ordinance on consent. However that goes down, but when we adopt a code, it just automatically hits. But the offer is always there that if you would like us to hold a separate hearing, come present separately to you all or anything along those lines, that option is there. And we do have areas, there are a few amendments that are unique to the city of Wichita. As we were going forward, we've got one residential amendment that is unique to the city of Andover. So we are able to accommodate that if there is something that your city council just feels is extremely important. And the Andover amendment is specific to fire alarms in homes. They still require a fire alarm in every bedroom. We allow fire alarms to be outside the door of a bedroom as long as they are tested to the level that you can hear them inside the room with the door closed, fan running. There's several criteria for that. But that's just one example of something that you as a council may get into discussion with your staff with, and you may want us to do something slightly differently than what our code currently states. That would certainly be something we could work.
So are you saying that we would have the right to amend it to make it stricter, but we couldn't make it less stringent, or it could go either way?
You would have the authority to go either way. ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Now, you would, as you can tell, I apologize for talking too much if I am, but you can tell you might get some discussion from me on that. I'll be happy. I will definitely be happy to let you know our rationale and where we're at, but you certainly hold that final authority. So with this, sorry, I said I was going to be fast, and I got talking about something else, didn't I? So with the NEC, so again, what we do is we start off, we give a definition of where that code is, what it affects, talk about how the ensuring that we coordinate that across, of course, the other codes that we're using, talk about the current adoption and where that fits, how many amendments we have, some of the specific things that we looked at and found in that code. We also talk about the impact, which there you see, as I cited earlier, that we have an impact to the 18 of you all in Sedgwick County, as well as Butler County with our two and Sumner County there as adjacent counties. Obviously talk about any industry issues or concerns or any management issues we may have seen with the code as it has been before. Luckily, we have not, we've gotten that pretty well smoothed out. We have not seen any in recent cycles. We'll talk about, so here's an example of how this code was reviewed. Our Board of Electrical Appeals, which is our electrical advisory board, did the bulk of the review, took that through the industry stakeholders that you see there, to include the fire departments, of course. And then all of our codes, we meet with the Wichita Area Builders Association Codes and Standards Committee on each of these. And depending on the type of code, as you may guess, our residential code is a pretty in-depth review with them over 2 or 3 different meetings. Electrical code was across a couple meetings. Other codes, elevator code, for example, probably took me 5 or 6 minutes to go over that with them, and that's all they were worried about hearing. So, but we do discuss every one of the codes with the Builders Association that we are adopting, and it is important to my governing bodies in Wichita and Sedgwick to know that we have concurrence there and an agreement on anything we're doing. And then we don't go over every amendment, but we hit the major changes in the codes that we think the public should be aware of and that we think will most impact the industry. So we'll hit those, we'll go through them. It so happened that in the latest version, I went the wrong way. So happens that in the latest version of the electrical code, most of it impacted residential. Not a big impact, but there were a few things that were updated there. And that hits that. Do you have more slides behind this, sir, that you want to? Okay, yeah, and I will let you go from there. But hopefully, so that gives you a little bit of a breakdown of how our code works, and hopefully within that I made sense in trying to describe kind of our licensing, permitting flow, or the process that we would go through in supporting you if this is the right thing for Bel Aire. We would certainly be happy to utilize that, as again has already been discussed this evening. we realize that it's getting harder to hire folks. I feel that too, but I've been able to increase salaries, and we've been able to make some consolidations, adjust some positions. Plan review is a hot commodity. I've been very lucky to get a few new plan reviewers on board. Very happy to be able to do that. One of those included someone who used to work at Andover. That's so sadly, we kind of put them in a pinch by stealing their guy. We're already kind of
So they said take it all,
talking
huh?
about this stuff, but yeah, so sorry about that, but we'll still help you out. Right? So but it is kind of, it is an interesting time, but luckily we have been able to still sustain that, and it appears we will be able to going forward. But again, it's kind of based on the fact that we are somewhat of a regional agency at this point and able to do that. Certifications are obviously very important to us, keeping up with those. And then maybe one last thing is noting on the revenue discussion, of course, noting that revenue for building is designed as a fee for service. I'm looking to break even is what I'm saying with that. Obviously looking for cost recovery, not looking to make any money there. Part of my audit is to ensure that I am not excessively making money off of the builders. So we do feel that, a split to ensure that we are paying for the Bel Aire staff and the Bel Aire work that would be done on these is certainly an important part of this.
Well, I do have a few questions, and I'll, of course, want council members to ask their questions as well. But one is I don't think that Bel Aire is going to change the workload significantly, but how do you keep that workload? Are you well staffed? I mean, you said you had 32 inspectors, but I don't know what that means in terms of what workload is out there for you if you just took on Andover and you have 18 cities in Central County. So,
and that's a great question, Mayor. We actually just hired 3 new inspectors. We had an inspector position that was not being used, funded, but not utilized based on our current workload. Andover, and then with the Andover basically increase, we hired that inspector position. We have 2 part-time inspectors that positions that we utilize in that way to help us as well. So right now we are in good shape, definitely to handle this. An important part of what you ask is priorities. So we include that in the contract, that the priorities are the priorities. So concrete pours, for example, that they tend to be the highest priority and those are the ones that we allow to schedule for a specific time versus a morning or an afternoon. So a concrete pour across all of our jurisdiction gets the top priority and on down. So we do not prioritize by jurisdiction. We prioritize by the inspection. If we were ever in a spot where due to health, cyber attack, whatever that would be, that we were going to have a problem supporting, again, it would be across the board. We would obviously, part of our checklist would be to ensure that we got with your staff and let them know where we were at and try to definitely at least handle anything emergency or emergent.
okay, thank you. Transition. We have some buildings already under construction, and I'm sure that they'll probably still be under construction after Keith retires. So how does that impact things, and what plans is there in place to do a transition there?
Paul, you want this one or me take it? It's up to you.
I can talk. Part of our issue is that prior to Keith leaving, we are going to make sure that MABCD inspector has all of our documents, the planning, the plan review. They've already pulled permits. So all that is in our system. We will just make sure that we turn the documents over and then let them know what we've already inspected and what's to come. And so that's how we're going to do it. And Keith is going to weigh in on and help with that transition and help meet with them so that they understand where we've been and where we're going moving forward.
Good.
Yeah.
And that's where there's a little bit of advantage because there's four active construction sites. So that's a little easier to deal with 4 general contractors instead of 20 throughout the city. So it's a little smoother. And then the good thing too is every builder is used to working with MABCD. They're familiar with how to request an inspection, those types of processes. So the transition won't be as hard. I mean, every transition's hard. Sorry, Paul, but it'll be a little smoother on the builder side than on the staff side.
So your budget falls under Sedgwick County budget, does it? Okay. So if we have problems with your budget, we need to talk to our Sedgwick County folks, right?
To the commission.
I see.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yes,
Um,
and we have not, knock on wood as always, but we actually are giving a 10% discount right now on our building related fees because we have had excess revenue over the last few years.
well, I thought
So
maybe you were
right
trying to
now
get
our
more
budget
business.
budget has been solid.
Okay, very good. You talked a little bit about code changes and the frequency of those, and I know they don't change them every day, every year, but there's a lot of codes out there. I think, and I know you said you do a summary of those codes. I think it'd be wise that if we adopt this, and I assume we will, that we get a review of those changes because, well, we could have some issues with some of them. I don't know that, but I do audits in aerospace industry, and I see changes there that I think, I wonder about that. But so I can't push back on those. I just have to accept them because I'm only the auditor. But in this case, I think we might want to consider that I'm saying we would. I don't know. I don't have that crystal ball.
That's exactly right, Mayor. That's the next step. The good thing is once we sign the contract, we'll have inspectors to inspect, and then we'll be working together throughout the next. And they're getting ready to adopt a new code cycle, which is good timing for us in the review. And we'll have another pretty full workshop on codes here coming up soon on the differences and those types of issues that was discussed today. But MABCD does a good job working with the city during these transition phases, and I think we can smooth that out as well as the comp plan has a lot of different elements that's coming up before us of zoning code changes, and frankly looking at ours, we're a little behind the times, I think, in some things. So that'll probably take over a course of a couple of different workshops and how we want to do it. Paula, you want to add?
I think it's fair to say that the city of Bel Aire is a few cycles behind in updating the codes, the building codes. So,
However, that's the most confusing thing I've ever experienced. I've been in government for a while, and so you adopt a year code, and then you amend out of certain things. So you can either non-amend and have it's an interesting case study of codes and cycles. But it's something that
gaining a lot of really needed things by moving to the code cycle that you're doing, and then looking at the amendment opportunity if there's something special for Bel Aire that we need to consider. So,
Very good.
And I will echo that definitely we are on the same page of wanting to review and look at the codes. I have spoken with several cities who, based on advice and staffing, et cetera, just adopted a code wholesale. And there's a lot in those national codes, and they're designed as a one size fits all that the city should amend. There are tables in there that you actually have to pick a county option, right? So based on where you live with frost loads, wind loads, those sort of things. So there are certainly items in there that should be reviewed. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you have all of our amendment packages, but I know that Keith has most of them. So he has already begun, he and my staff have already begun that review of what is different between your code and mine that would be something we consider other than administrative, if you will. And I think it is important to reiterate, as Ted said too, that your builders are building under my code generally anyway. So most likely they're building to code that we offer courses. We're an ICC preferred provider. So some of those update code courses each year each cycle when we do these, we will have some of the ICC code writers out here to teach courses on the differences. Usually we'll have a couple hundred contractors show up to those. So they are most likely building more to my code today than they are to yours, but that works because it's a newer code. So it's going to be transparent to your inspector in that regard, right? So.
Well, thank you for being here for MABCD. It's good to see you up here. This just makes a lot of sense. I think I appreciate you guys laying out sort of the process. And, from a budgeting standpoint, this is a good example of how we can become more efficient and save taxpayers' dollars. So really in support of it. Appreciate you being here to present.
Thanks, sir.
I just want to add, Chris, we've had about 4 meetings together, and he's just been a consummate, we're all in this together type of leader in our county. And I just really appreciate him. And he's been always, Ted, whatever you need. And thank you so much for being here tonight and for helping me and helping us through this process.
Oh, very welcome. Like I said, my staff has known yours for a lot of years, so there's a lot of respect there. Now, I've been in this position 7 years and a bit now, so I'm actually not a building guy by trade either. Air Force brought me here, Air Force and KC-46. So I came here for that. And family, interestingly, from Alaska. Family
You're
came
not
here
flying
kicking
for
his.
KC-46s, huh?
What's that?
And you're not flying in the KC-46s?
Well, I was a maintenance guy.
Oh, okay.
And I had worked the F-22 and the F-35 programs.
Okay.
So Air Force wanted me to see some big airplanes again, and since we worked the new programs,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
So
family came here kicking and screaming because what's in Kansas, and then 3.5 years later, nobody'd leave. So
Right.
I retired, and here I am.
Okay. Does any of the council members have any other questions or concerns to discuss with Chris or Paula?
Really more for Paula or Ted. So with Keith departing, and if we do outsource to MABCD, does anything else augment downstream from Ted in terms of number of people we need? I know we're not doing that much commercial inspection as it is, but does staffing stay about the same still?
Yeah, it shouldn't affect staffing levels. This move here, like I said, the commercial side is so specialized and so infrequent. The residential side is really what's keeping us going, and as well as all the other initiatives Paul has put in place with the ERP and all the reviews. And a lot of times in departments, you're doing just enough. You're just trying to survive. And that's been about the last 4 years, is just getting permits out the door, getting inspections. And I think Paul is a great addition so that we can step back and start asking why and improving that process for not only the builders, but staff and the residents themselves.
Very good. Well, thank you, Chris, for your presentation and information, and Paula as well. If we're done with this subject, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, very good. Appreciate it. And even though it's item 3 on the agenda, it's really the last item to discuss. So ordinance to incorporate 2024 standard traffic ordinances for Kansas cities and other issues related. You want us to read this tonight?
No, I'm just going to lead you through some points.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm looking for the little clicker. Okay, so I gave a copy to Councilmember Emily Hamburg and Tyler Dean, these booklets.
Can you speak in the microphone? I can't quite hear you.
Thank you, Mayor Benaj. I gave a couple of these booklets to Councilmember Hamburg and Councilmember Dean, and they can pass around. One is for the Uniform Public Offense Code, and the other is for the Standard Traffic Ordinance. Those books are published by the League of Kansas Municipalities. Whenever there's an update, a new edition comes out. If they do come out, it's in July of each year. The Public Offense Code is the 40th edition, and the Standard Traffic Ordinance is the 51st. They've been published since 1980. There's at least 100 public offenses in those books. They involve infractions and misdemeanors. Of course, felonies would be at district court. The only thing that we can prosecute at Bel Aire Municipal Court are the infractions and misdemeanors. If you're a member, which Bel Aire is, to purchase these books, 1 to 4 of them are 10, 5 to 10 are $9.50, 11 to 30 of them are $9, and 31 plus are $8.50 each. I thought that you just might find that information helpful as to costs. We can also get an electronic version. The electronic version requires you to sign a licensing agreement, and there's a 1-year term. If a police officer is out on the street, he is most likely not going to want an electronic version. He is going to want the hard copy with him, but that is available, especially if you have in-house staff that needs to view them. So what I have proposed is, this is the title, and you will see this. I provided a copy to each of you. This is what the ordinance will be called. I'm bringing your attention to the highlighted portions. It says that we are incorporating the Public Offense Code, the 40th edition. If we are going to be updating and adding an ordinance, then we should repeal the older ordinances. That is why you see a repeal of 3 different ordinances: 447, 474, and 487, right here. Also in this ordinance, I have that we're going to amend the chapter, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, there are 721 ordinances. Yes, I'm going through them because I'm trying to find all of the old ones that involve the Uniform Public Offense Code and the old ones that involve the Standard Traffic Ordinance. So these are 3. There were others that had already been repealed. If I find any more, we can always do an ordinance at the end of the year or next year that repeals old ordinances. The other thing I want to draw your attention to are a couple of sections in this new ordinance. Section 2, line 50, it's making it very clear to anyone who views it that those 3 ordinances are being repealed in their entirety. They're gone. Section 3, I want to bring your attention to that we will be repealing part of Ordinance 496, but not the entirety. The only part we are repealing is the part in Ordinance 496 that involves an earlier prior version of the Public Uniform Code. The reason we're not repealing 496 entirely is because 496 goes into detail about other offenses in Bel Aire. It talks about resist arrest, window peeping. Those are specific offenses that were not in the Public Offense Code, but at some point in time in the history, Bel Aire said they wanted to have those. So that is why we're going to keep 496. Now, next year in 2025, I will have a conversation with the prosecutor, our judge, and even Bel Aire Police Department to see, do we still want to keep these? Do we want to add more? And then in 2025, we'll be able to fully repeal all of 496 and then add a new ordinance for any updates from the League of Kansas Municipalities. This is very tiny writing, but this is what is on the website. If a resident or anyone wants to go and look at the Bel Aire Code, they can go online and they can look up, well, what offense code does Bel Aire use? And they'll see in Chapter 6 that we use the Uniform Public Offense Code. It's an older version. So this ordinance, what you're looking at, will replace it. It will replace this part of the website when our website gets updated. And that specific part starts at line 32 of what I gave you. From line 32 all the way to line 48, that would go onto the website. I would like to draw your attention to this section. On this section, we're saying that we will have at least 1 copy of the hardbound book in the city hall down at the desk. So if a resident wants to come see it, they can. Attached to that book will be a copy of the ordinance which approved the incorporation of that code. Also, it will be available during City Hall's business hours that the police department, the municipal judge, the municipal prosecutor, the city attorney and clerk, and any other administrative departments that need this access to this book or are charged with enforcement of the code, that they shall be supplied a book at the cost of the city. So that's the guts of this ordinance. That's the reason for the ordinance update, because there have been updates. One of those updates is the disorderly conduct. With disorderly conduct, at one time, the ordinance includes noisy sound, anything that can cause reasonable concern to an individual by being noisy. That went to the Kansas Supreme Court. They said that was too broad, that was unconstitutional. Consequently, that statement was taken out. That is a new update that's in the book, so you won't see that. Another update is when it comes to purchasing or possessing cigarettes or tobacco. You used to be able to get it at 18, and now it's 21. So those are some updates that have been made, and I've already talked to our municipal prosecutor. She actually prosecutes in other jurisdictions, and it would be nice to be able to have this updated version. So now we're going to do the exact same thing with the standard traffic ordinance.
I'm not sure where it falls, but is there anything coming up or anywhere about the public camping? I don't know why I can't spit words out.
So that is not included, but if Bel Aire wants to do that, then we could. Wichita is actually doing that. They're looking at different ordinances, and there's a new case out, which is giving cities some guidance as to how to proceed. I think the Grants Pass case, I think I may have sent. That's an example, but that's something that we can pursue. Councilmember
So
Welch.
is Wichita's ordinance, have you been following it? Does it look like something we might want to copy?
It is something, and I can provide that at another workshop so that council can consider it, but they have a very updated version.
Yeah, I knew they were working on it. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know if they've adopted it yet.
Yeah, I don't know either. I haven't heard that.
But I can definitely provide that. to
I do
council.
know under their old, or maybe it's still current, they were enforcing public camping with notices.
Mhm.
And I think it's a 72-hour notice, but I don't know the details of their ordinance. So if we don't have one, I think we should.
Yeah, I agree. I was just downtown yesterday and saw a lot of cases of things I'd like to not see in Bel Aire.
That's helpful because I can go and get some input from the police department, our prosecutor and judge as to what they've seen and bring that to council as well. Any other questions about the,
I was curious about the noise. You said that they took it completely out, that there's no limit on somebody. If I want to go and buy a high-powered amplifier and start screaming my whole neighborhood with
okay.
old rock and roll music, and some of them don't like that, that's okay?
Well, I don't know if you remember a few years back, there were quite a few protests going on across the country, and there were protests in Wichita on the streets. It even impeded traffic. There were some individuals on the street that some of them were yelling, some of them had shields and weapons, and they were making noise, and that noisy conduct tending to reasonably arouse alarm, anger, or resentment in others. That is exactly what was used to charge some of those individuals. Well, of course, it went to the Kansas Supreme Court, and they said that noisy conduct is just too vague. It's just too broad. And what about First Amendment? What about an individual expressing themselves? But that's the noisy conduct that was being used. So if you were to get angry and frustrated, in fact, I don't like using the mayor as an example. If a person were going to get angry and frustrated and move their arms around, that noisy conduct tending to reasonably arouse alarm would not be a basis for disorderly. Mhm.
Can we stop it based on amplification?
Yeah. So
I
That would be
understand
something
people wanting
different.
to get
Decibels?
out there and yell, but if they're using a microphone or a
Yeah.
I believe we have a code about amplified devices that covers.
So if it's not a person, if it's music, that would be different. And that was actually discussed at a recent conference I went to where the police department has an access to an instrument that reads the decibels. That's actually what Wichita does as well. At the conference I went to, it's happening especially with neighbors having parties going late at night. So then the law department, law enforcement sends out an individual with their body camera recording and then also with the instrument measuring the decibels and if it reaches a certain level. So this would not affect that. We still have that.
But
Oh, we do.
you can't apply the decibel level to somebody who's just out there ranting about whatever issue they want to.
No, not yet. But no, I'm trying to think.
Want to argue the case, but that seems unreasonable to me that we let them have any level of noise.
Well, we do have, I guess we could look, there are some ordinances that look at the background of like, is that individually impaired in walking down the street? That's happened before. Or is this an individual who's about ready to assault and batter someone? Are they doing it in an angry, insolent manner? So there are some situations like that, but definitely if it's just because they're being loud and that noisy conduct is it, that would not be under disorderly conduct.
So I'm wanting to walk into a business and a guy standing there right at the door with a bullhorn.
That's Councilmember Welch. You always keep me on my toes. Well, I guess it really comes down to the circumstances. We'd have to look at that. But at least I wanted to share that update
Okay.
for UPOC, at least for
I
tonight.
said I wasn't going to argue the case, and then I started
Yeah,
arguing
the
case.
decibels. Yeah, you should be able to use decibels, or if it's amplified, because your voice, you'd be able to have free speech. But when it's amplified, that adds another characteristic,
Mhm.
and then you could do the decibels.
Maria, help me a little bit. I'm a little newbie. What we're approving now is different than the city Bel Aire code, right? And there's plenty of amplification codes in our Bel Aire code that would protect certain
That's what
So
situations.
this doesn't replace those codes.
This
is what
doesn't
you're saying.
replace these.
Okay, I was going to say, as
Correct.
long as
Yeah.
we're not dropping
So
them.
I think we're talking about two separate.
Okay.
There's plenty
All right.
of City of Bel Aire codes
Okay.
that have to deal with this issue.
We won't be repealing any of those. We are keeping them. However, a majority of Bel Aire's codes are through the Uniform Public Offense Code. And with them having updates, we just naturally incorporate that update. But we won't be repealing anything
Okay.
with this. The ordinances that are going to be repealed are because they stated an earlier version
Right.
of this
They've been
specific
replaced.
book, not any specific offenses.
That helps.
Do we have anything on panhandling? Because because it's pretty much a business, and I didn't know if we were going to address. I thought the city of Wichita did that. All of a sudden just kind of disappeared. So I don't know if they changed that for people that were basically working the streets, and I didn't know if we had anything related to that. They were originally, it said something about fining the people that were doing it. And then there was a fine if you supported that. And then I think the fire department people said they used to do the boot, and they said they had to change how they did that because of that ordinance. But I don't know if that ever happened or what. So, that's just something that,
We don't
I
have
see.
that.
okay.
I'm looking through the code, the uniform code. It doesn't have that, and we don't have that as a separate ordinance either.
Okay.
What some jurisdictions are focusing on is an individual cannot create an unsafe environment by walking onto the roadway or being at the intersection to be distracting, but that's what it was ultimately focusing on. But we don't have anything like that. If the council is interested, I can propose something.
Well, I don't know. Then you have to start talking about busking.
It's true.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's a challenging one.
Those are areas that are challenging for
Yeah.
bigger cities. So I just didn't want some of those issues to transfer here, because if the city starts trying to change things, we don't want this to be a place where, okay, let's go here. It's
Yeah,
okay. Like, wait a minute.
I can appreciate that, but I would rather try to handle that if we end up with an issue than try to address it.
Up front.
Otherwise, because I don't know how to address it. That's the problem.
True, I know. Well, I think there's a lot of cities have that issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is kind of a little bit sideways, but is there anything in this standard traffic ordinance about chicken lanes? We don't have chicken lanes yet in Bel Air, but we're getting one of these
I
days.
don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if there is. I can look.
All right. But I just
And get an
curious if
answer
there
for
is
you.
any rules about that, because I mean they're in
look at
Wichita,
that.
but we don't.
Sure.
We're going to have one of these days.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
The center lane down Woodlawn
For me,
of the
Oh.
3-lane road.
There are so many people that don't even know how to use that when it's there.
Well, that's the reason I want to know what the rules are, because there's nobody ever. I've not heard anybody give the rules on
What's the
when to use it
issue?
and how to use it.
Oh,
How
and I
far
know
is that?
some that do that, they drive a half a mile down that middle, and it's people turn the other way.
Okay. I will look at that because
Yeah.
I don't know
And you meet them head on.
if we have
Wait a
that or
minute.
not.
That's why it's chicken.
Since you're talking about traffic ordinance, I know
Mhm.
we have a little bit different law here about
It's hard, then you
speed.
gotta go either way, you know.
That if you go
Correct.
so far over, are we retaining that?
You're correct. And I want to pull that up real quick.
Because I don't want
Okay.
to lose what we've got.
No, you're right. Well, and Councilmember Welch, I will get to that in just a couple of slides. I just want to show you real quick on this slide, the title. We're bringing attention to the highlighted where it's a 51st edition. We're repealing 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 ordinances. All of those 6 ordinances will be repealed in their entirety because they are referencing an older version. There's nothing in those ordinance that would affect those specific speeding exceptions you're talking about. Now on section 3, we would be repealing part of 446 and 491, only the part where it talks about an older version, but those are the ordinance that are talking about what you are talking about, Councilmember Welch, the speeding, the specific areas, the specific locations, specific stop signs, those will be kept. This will not affect it. We're just wanting to make sure to get the most updated version of the standard traffic ordinance.
Okay. And one other thing that brought to mind is I hope that the chief of police has reviewed both of these documents and
In fact, he's asked me when I'm going to get that done. So he's all on board. And I gathered input from our city prosecutor. She's on board. And I've also spoken with the Bel Air Police Department staff so that they're ready to go. They've already looked at it and they have no concerns
okay,
at this
good.
time. Just like the public offense code, this is what you would see on the website. We would replace it with a new language that talks about the new edition.
So this says it's 51st and that says 52nd.
Oh, that's a typo on my PowerPoint.
Okay.
I will double check the
Make
ordinance
sure.
before you see it next week. Thank you. And then the updates, there are many, but some of the big ones for Bel Air is that now for an individual, it is a violation occurs when they do not appear in municipal court and if they don't pay their fine and court costs as ordered by the court. Another thing is the municipal court is going to be restricted in how they suspend a person's driver's license. If it's certain charges, municipal court will not be able to suspend their driver's license. Some of those charges that the court is not allowed to suspend on would be crossing at other than a crosswalk, jaywalk. Do you see the difference, the level of these offenses? An individual who did not stop while they were on the roadway, the person who left their motor vehicle unattended. So these are specific offenses that if an individual is found guilty of them, the municipal court be restricted from suspending their driver's license over a conviction.
And are we going to have to deal with what we see like Wichita doing, where they fine so many people that they can't have a driver's license, and then when they forgive the fines?
I don't know if we're seeing that. That's a good question. I will ask our judge and our prosecutor to see if they're seeing that in municipal court, but I haven't even asked about that. I know what you're talking about with Wichita. They're trying to do a forgiveness program to help individuals
Sometimes
get their
they
license back.
impose huge fines that the people just don't have the wherewithal to even pay.
Mhm.
You know, I don't make enough money to pay this in a year, kind of stuff.
We don't have a program for that, but I will ask to see if we're hearing that from individuals, defendants in the municipal court.
Part of that is how much leeway does the judge have in imposing those fines? Is it an all or nothing, or can they?
I'll find out. I'll find out for you.
So related to that, specifically, I'd like to know, do we have a problem with people who are driving without, under suspended license that are just chronic at that?
Oh, repeat offenders.
Repeat offenders, yes.
Habitual violators.
Because if, I know the program in Wichita that they're trying to put together, and I don't know if they've had any success at doing it, was they just have people that are repeat offenders, and they have no means of work if they can't drive. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg type of thing. You know, if you don't do something about it, they're never going to be able to be good citizens, because they're just trapped. I don't want us to see us in that kind of situation. I don't want to see us put people in that kind of situation. I realize some of it, they put themselves in that because they're doing some things they shouldn't be doing. But what are do we even have a problem we needed to talk about?
Is there a way to force them to what they used to do, the traffic school? I don't know if anything like that exists anymore.
There are classes, traffic safety classes. I will ask. I'll get that information for you, because I honestly don't know if we're seeing that here. As far as a traffic safety class, there are driver's awareness classes that you can do face-to-face in person or online, and they all have costs.
Well, I'm just thinking, I was watching something on YouTube the other day, and it was about some gal that had been stopped numerous times for speeding, and she caused a fatality accident. What can we do to train those people? And I hope she never has a car again, but she might, because somebody starts saying, well, it's a right to have a car. And
Sounds like manslaughter to me.
Chief Atterbury just texted me yes with the exclamation point. So I believe we do have those in place, but
okay.
Maria will follow up.
He's so good. This slide is something new. On the ordinance at the very top, we usually put down published at Ark Valley News. This will be published on the website. So it looks different, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing is, this is just a little bit of a screenshot of your very last page. It's an example of our affidavit of publishing that we're going to be doing now. It's going to show that our city clerk published it on our website, the official city newspaper, and then signature and notary. I was just bringing that to your attention so you could see an example.
Do we publish anything like on the walls of the hallway, or even some kind of notice that says that everything's published on the website? So if somebody walks into the building,
I can work up a sign.
Okay.
Any other questions? Concerns?
I'm just shocked it's only 8:30.
If we started at 7, it'd be 9.
Yeah, we're not gone yet. You're right. Excuse me. Tyler's going to bring up a bunch of other issues.
Mayor, I got a few other things that I want to talk about now.
They're not on the agenda, I'm sorry.
Well, we got time.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Maria, for that information and the work on that. And so item 6 on the agenda is other issues. Are there other issues that we should be discussing tonight?
Wondering how serious Ted was. He might have had one or two small things.
Well, if there aren't any other issues, I think we'll dismiss the evening and go home, and we'll see everybody next Tuesday.
Sounds like a good deal.
Have a good evening. Have a good rest of your week.
Good night.
Thank
And
you.
those of you that are going to be at the League of
That's right, that
Kansas
starts
Municipalities, we'll look forward to seeing you there
Thursday.
this weekend.